It seems the abortion battle is far from over. Late last year, Missouri voters enshrined reproductive rights into the state constitution. It's the law of the land, but new laws are already in the works. Amendment 3 won by 95,000 votes in November, and Republican leaders I've talked to in state government say to them that's close enough to show Missourians are deeply divided on abortion. They're discussing ways to limit the scope of what's legal, and they'll have support from the executive branch. Governor-elect Mike Kehoe told us here on the broadcast it's a priority.
Many of those legislators feel like the most important thing we can do is to protect innocent life. I feel like the most important thing we can do is protect innocent life. So we're going to look at what the constitutional guidelines are and try to also find a way to always promote innocent life.
So what does that mean? That's the million-dollar question right now. Republicans have already pre-filed dozens of bills related to reproductive health care. Some proposed new constitutional amendments, either reversing Amendment 3 or working to tweak definitions in an effort to exclude abortion or even change the meaning of a person to cover a fetus inside the womb. One state senator wants to only allow abortions for victims of rape or incest if they filed a police report. Will any of these measures gain traction in a Republican-led General Assembly? And if yes, what happens? Let's get to the heart of the matter with Emily Wales, President and CEO of Planned Parenthood Great Plains. Welcome back. We know you have already been to court over this issue after voters passed Amendment 3. What are you bracing for this year?
I think it's going to be a wild legislative session, and of course we're trying to do two things at once. One, we are trying to implement the mandate of the people to actually restart abortion services, which has not yet happened in Missouri. But we also know that the legislature is going to try to undermine, to undercut, and really deny Missourians their new constitutional right.
Yeah, this recent court decision is temporary, and as you said, that you're just really kind of getting the ball rolling on reproductive health care. What are you telling your providers and your patients right now?
The confusing thing for patients and for Missourians generally is that we don't actually have abortion services reestablished. Already we're seeing fear tactics, I think fear mongering from really conservative anti-abortion legislators, but we don't have care reestablished. The licensure process, which was in place and was for many years weaponized against providers, remains in effect now. The injunction was huge. It's a tremendous step forward, but this fight isn't over. And the idea that abortion is not regulated, is being abused by people in the state is wildly inaccurate.
You mentioned the rhetoric. A moment ago, we just heard from Missouri Senate Majority Leader-elect Republican Tony Luetkemeyer. I want to play something that he said to me about the court ruling last month. Let's play that.
We have a recent court decision that just came down implementing Amendment 3 that authorizes abortions at 20 weeks. So late-term abortions are now constitutional in Missouri. It invalidated Missouri's law banning elective abortions. So somebody can't decide to get an abortion because of gender selection or because they want to discontinue a late-term pregnancy because the child's going to have a disability like Down syndrome. Those are things that I think the majority of Missourians would agree with Republicans on, that goes way too far.
What's your response?
It's inaccurate, it's alarming. It's upsetting that someone who should know better, who should actually understand that the language of the constitutional amendment doesn't say that, and also that abortion still is not available in Missouri. That's not what's happening. More than anything, I think what we learned from Missourians during the Amendment 3 process was that they don't want politicians making these decisions. It's clear to me, just listening about the language from politicians here in Missouri, that they're not medical providers. They don't understand the really heartbreaking, difficult situations that patients often face and want to have conversations with their providers, their faith leaders, their families, not politicians about.
We talk about viability, right? That's key to this amendment that says abortions are allowed until that point. That's when a fetus could survive outside of the womb. Doctors typically say that's sometime after 21 weeks of pregnancy. Republicans, you just heard, are kind of using this to say it's almost open season for what they call late-term abortions, but only about 1% of all abortions in the U.S. are actually performed at 20 weeks. So is this still a battle of misinformation? And what happens next? Because you have a Republican-led General Assembly.
It is. It absolutely is a battle about misinformation and really about trying to use language to, I think, weaponize what are often heartbreaking situations families face. Very few patients actually come in wanting or needing to access care at that point. And when those situations do happen, it's generally not outpatient abortion clinics like Planned Parenthood that are providing them. We are talking about in-hospital care involving a team of professionals who know and understand what to do in those situations to support patients and their families.
As we said, the judge's order is temporary. What is next for you and supporters of Amendment 3?
Even now, the fight to restore abortion access continues. We are going back to the court already, asking the judge to reconsider this licensing process. We have a couple of options on the table at this point. We could engage in the licensure process, which was weaponized, which led to things like period tracking, sort of infamously in Missouri. We're not interested in putting patients at a disadvantage when it comes to accessing their constitutional rights. So we are planning to ask the judge to take a look again and to treat abortion the way it should be, which is like other types of healthcare that are regulated by healthcare professionals.
All right, we'll be watching closely. Emily Wells with Planned Parenthood, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.